Hey guys, today I'm going to talk a little bit about how to determine if the feedback we receive is worth listening to. For many of us, it can be difficult to receive negative feedback, and it can be difficult to determine what feedback we really should be listening to, what we should take in and try to improve from, and what feedback we might just want to toss away and not try to internalize. That can be a difficult decision to make and a thin line to toe. So let's talk about it. And I'll give you a sort of method that you can use to determine which feedback you should be listening to. So here it is. First, we need to start with considering the message. That is, taking all the context aside and just take the message as it is, the words as they were said to us. So, a few things will make that feedback just invalid right off the bat, at least in my mind. So, here's what you should be looking out for. You should consider if it's highly emotional, if it is really loaded with language, positive or negative. If it's loaded with very emotional language, then it landed on that person very personally. And maybe that's what you want if you're an artist of some sort. You want it to land emotionally. And maybe in that case, it would be right. But for a lot of us, we're not looking for a very emotional reaction. When we're looking for feedback, we want it to be rational and fair. And so we don't want feedback that is loaded with emotion. If it's highly emotional in the language itself, then maybe we should consider it's not worth listening to. But that's not going to be the only criteria. Let's look at a few more. Another one would be extreme language. So this is really kind of like terms assessments that are very extreme on one end or the other. True feedback should be pretty even handed. If the feedback you're receiving is using very extreme language, then it might not really be worth internalizing because it might be coming from a place that's just not fair or level headed. Any sort of feedback that comes in terms of absolutes is also a problem. Anything that uses absolute language, fully this way, fully that way, no room for interpretation, language that uses absolutes like that should also give us pause. The last couple things that we should consider in the message itself is if it's just outright unfair. If the way the message is delivered and the language within seems just very one sided, unfair, or harshly interpreted, we should kind of second guess that and look a little deeper on that feedback and maybe consider if it's coming from the right place. Another would be if it's just outright biased. If the feedback has a very clear bias in it that is clouding the judgment of the person delivering it, then maybe we should just toss that aside too, because that's a whole bag of business we don't really want to get into. And we shouldn't let that leak into our perception of ourselves. That's a bias that just needs to be set aside. Next, after we consider the message, we should consider the sender. And this is usually what I talk to my clients about, especially the young ones, is I talk a lot about who is sending that message to you, who's delivering it, where is the message coming from, and do they have any right to deliver that message? Let me give you an example. So, what I always tell clients, and they get a kick out of this, the young ones, is if someone walked up to you wearing a trash bag, they they just that's the clothes they decided to wear today, a trash bag, maybe they taped it up around the waist or the neck or something like that, and they insulted you on your outfit. Would you take that insult seriously? You know, unless trash bags are high fashion now, and I just didn't know about that. I mean, I've seen the fashion industry, that could be the case. But I don't think that we should take fashion advice from someone wearing a trash bag. Maybe that seems obvious, but this can be happening a lot of times in our life where we receive feedback from someone who has no expertise in the field, no background at all, doesn't have taste necessary to really give us constructive feedback. And so we really should be second guessing where that feedback's coming from. Is it coming from a fair place, an informed place, someone who is in the know enough to even give us that feedback? Because if it's not, then maybe we should just toss it out. You can't imagine how many times professional athletes probably receive very negative feedback from people who have never even competitively played that sport a moment in their life. So they probably shouldn't and don't take all of that in. That would be absurd. So they really do need to kind of narrow the scope of the feedback that they can receive. They're more likely to believe their coach or their teammates or maybe even another player on another team someone who has expertise and experience in that field that validates the feedback that they're giving. Another thing to consider is, are they the audience that you're aiming for? If you're looking for feedback on, say, your performance as a voice actor for an animated show, then you probably shouldn't be seeking feedback from people who have no interest in animation, have never watched anything, and actively dislike it. That's probably not the audience you're looking for. You want to hear from the people that would possibly watch the thing that you're engaged in, the people who would be exposed to your work in a real way. You want to consider if the person that is giving you the feedback is actually interested in your growth. That's what feedback should be. Feedback should be constructive and it should be actionable. It should drive you towards a greater goal. It should make you better at the thing that you're asking for feedback on. So, when you're soliciting feedback, or I guess if it's coming unsolicited, you should consider if the person giving it to you actually wants you to improve from that feedback or if they're just aiming to tear you down. The last thing to consider is, are they negatively motivated? When they're giving you that feedback, are they trying to make you better? If you consider all of these things, you take the feedback as it is, you consider if it's emotional, if it's extreme, if it's unfair or biased, and you consider the person giving it to you, whether or not they're interested in your growth, and if they're coming from the right place and able to really give you genuine feedback. If you've assessed all of these things and you feel comfortable, then take it in. As hard as it might be to hear, that is how we grow. That's how we get better at a given craft. That's how we get better as people. It's how we improve our relationships, our skills, everything. So take it in. At the same time, it can be very psychologically damaging and emotionally distressing to take on a bunch of negative feedback from people that have no right to give it to you, or feedback that is given in a way that's just not constructive, not helpful, and only meant to tear you down. So we do need to learn how to just shake off that negative feedback. So going through this process is a great way to learn to start doing that. It might still hit you, you might still get that ping of shame or guilt, or you may get some negative self-talk when you receive feedback that comes from a bad place. And that's okay as a first reaction. Give yourself grace, move through it. But then use this method to consider that feedback deeper and consider if it's really worth taking in. Because we really do need to shed off all of the negative feedback that isn't purposeful and isn't helping us. I hope this was helpful for you guys today. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and we'll see you soon.